and Maura Gillespie, who served as the Deputy Chief of Staff to Congressman Adam Kinzinger, all with us. Jeff, you're new to the table. I want to start with you. Big picture, who had the best night?
I think Nikki Haley had the best night, right? I think going into this, I was looking to see who was going to be the adult in the room, right? Donald Trump wasn't going to be there, so you had a chance to build your own brand. And I think she did a really good job of sending a strong, articulate message as to why she should be the nominee. And she was able to push back on Donald Trump in the appropriate manner and not kind of this overly over-the-top method. And she also articulated some really interesting policy decisions.
Well, they're so far behind, though, right? They're in the single digits, most of them. Is this enough to, I guess, realign the huddle of those who are so far behind Trump?
Well, I certainly hope so. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, there was three truths going into this debate. One is Donald Trump's in the lead. Two, Joe Biden is easily beatable. And three, there's 50 million Republicans that are still open for grabs. And so you have to aim your targets at that 50 million.
You know what I kept thinking about, John, last night? I kept thinking about the general election debates. And I kept thinking about each one of them versus Biden. And I kept thinking about a lot of energy coming from a lot of them and what that will look like.
That's what you should be thinking about, because that's the rational process of analyzing a primary. Who's the best general election candidate? Who's best projected to win? And I agree with Jeff. I think Nikki Haley had the best debate last night by far in terms of exceeding expectations. I thought Chris Christie and Mike Pence were both crisp, and they didn't play to the base, but they really did say, look, this is where I stand. And I think that itself is compelling to voters. I think DeSantis didn't have a breakout moment, despite the fact he was center stage.
Did not want people raising their hands.
No. Yeah.
It's not kindergarten, he says. It's not kindergarten.
Which is an attempt to sort of get out of that. And I thought Tim Scott, who's had a lot of goodwill and momentum, remember, especially in Iowa, because this is a state-by-state race, ultimately, did not have that kind of breakout moment that he really needed last night.
Was he too polite?
I don't know that was the sin, but he didn't elbow his way into the conversation as much.
Yeah, he was third from the bottom on the ranking of those who spoke. I mean, just ahead of Burgum and Huntington, who barely got onto the stage. So if we look at the question of Donald Trump and his decision not to participate, was there anything last night that you saw that said he should reconsider that for the September debate?
He should, just as far as supporting the voters.
But politically?
Politically, Donald Trump's going to do what he wants to do, right? He thought that he had the best chance of taking back the attention, taking the oxygen out of the room by having his one-on-one, where, if anyone watched it, I don't know if anyone watched the Tucker Carlson-Trump conversation, it was all backward-looking. I mean, he just solely focuses on what happened in the past. He has nothing to present to the American people as far as a forward-looking approach or any policies. So quite frankly, he probably wouldn't want to be able to want to take on those tough questions. So no, I don't see him looking at the last night's debate and thinking, oh, I could have really shined there in terms of substance, in terms of throwing jabs and elbows and inching his way into the conversation and just saying no and false like Vivek did. Yeah, he can do that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I do think politically not being there makes sense for him. He's the front runner by so much. And he wants to kind of almost come into this as, I am the president running. That's kind of what he's trying to do there. And so by not showing up, he's saying, I am, too above this system. And I do think it might work politically for him.
It's like a Rose Garden indictment strategy is what you're saying.
Fossil fuels. Back with us, John Avlon, Jessica Washington, Maura Gillespie, and Jeff Duncan. The Republican Party was asked about climate change. That's a good and important thing. But what Vivek Ramaswamy did there, what's your take?
Well, he certainly had the loud, proud thing going on and was shoveling lots of red meat the whole night, right? Donald Trump light, Donald Trump Jr., you name it, that was kind of the lane he wanted to fill, and mission accomplished, I guess. I think about that issue, climate change. I think about guns. I think about immigration. I think about all these opportunities for Republicans to kind of get to this reset point of a GOP 2.0 where we take a much more mature look at policies, right? Instead of doubling down on things that might have been popular or relevant or electable 10 years ago, we forward look and we have conservative conversations around climate change, immigration, right? We got to have a pathway here. We got to figure this out. We just can't lock the border. We got to figure out what to do with 16 million undocumented folks. We need to follow the lead of Joe Q. Public, who's talking about guns and wants to have is it okay to have 100 capacity magazines? Is it okay to let people with multiple red flags be able to buy guns on no time flat? I I mean, we've got to be able to have those mature conversations. I think that's the 65% of Republicans that are undecided right now. I think they're wanting to see that adult in the room rise up and have that conversation.
Yeah, and look, I mean, God bless you for pushing for a policy-based conversation that's pragmatic and nuanced. But, I mean, obviously, that's not the lane where conservative media is, and that was the cue that Vivek was taking. I think you're right to focus on that, though, because he is the youngest person on the stage. And to say that climate change is a hoax, to say that these attempted solutions have been worse than the underlying problem is clueless and callous and doesn't stand up to even the most basic scrutiny of fact checks. And then to have Ron DeSantis, a governor whose state is being enormously affected by these problems, sort of take a pass. But Nikki Haley, to her credit, was the adult in the room on this question as well. I think Chris Christie as well. You know, these are the kind of things we need to insist on a fact-based debate. It's not too much to ask. That kind of red meat dumbs us all down.
You mentioned playing to conservative media. There were a couple of times there where it seemed like they were shoehorning in some of those elements. Like Tim Scott said that his mother told him a few things. The last one, the boys play sports with boys, as if that's a lesson that his mom would send down about trans students playing sports. Vivek Ramaswamy did that as well, kind of listed off some headlines. He took a lot of incoming. Let's play some of what we heard from him, or candidates about him, there as he was at center stage.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here.
There you have it. Your watch, so the reality make America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what?
It shows.
Vivek, you recently said a president can't do everything. Well, I got news for you, Vivek. I've been in the hallway. I've been in the West Wing. A president of the United States has to confront every crisis facing America.
And that's the former vice president, who is now going after a person who's 38 years old, has never held political office. Does that make them look smaller? Does that diminish them by going after Vivek Ramaswamy?
No, it's about experience and being able to serve in the highest office of the country. And they pointed that out last night, that Vivek doesn't have experience in not just politics, but in leadership and understanding the issues. He demonstrated that he didn't understand the issues. And to your point about having it fact-based, nothing was fact-checked in real time, which is one of the biggest complaints many of us have about Donald Trump, is that it's hard to even keep up with how many lies he spews. And last night, it was hard for me to keep up with how many, mistakes and falsities that Vivek, iterated. So to me, and him being the youngest, I have to say too, it's kind of shocking that he was saying that climate change is a hoax when that is such an issue for younger voters, and his opportunity to appeal to them fell flat.
Yeah, especially on climate change. I mean, we're watching it happen in real time.
Right.
We're seeing these climate disasters. We have all of the scientific evidence that this is man-made, and this is an issue that we're perpetuating. It's not the early 2000s where people are saying, oh, some people don't believe in climate change, some people do. We're in this moment where everyone can see what's happening. It just feels so out of left field to even be having this debate, is climate change man-made or not?
Thank you very much.